Swear to me. Swear to me.
I am not going to laugh.
Swear to me. In this episode, Eric and I are picking our top 5 films from the year when gas was $1.23 per gallon. The minimum wage was $4.75, and everybody was going crazy trying to tickle Elmo. Stay with us. Welcome, friends, to the 3324 podcast. My name is Dean. As always, here with Eric.
Hello, Dean.
Hello, Eric. How's things?
I'm good. Yourself?
I'm doing well. I want to thank everybody for joining us. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. If you're an existing part of the 3324 family, welcome back. By all means, if you like what you hear, like and subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. We appreciate it. We definitely appreciate it. So, what are we talking about today?
Well, we're talking about movies of 1996.
Why?
I don't know. It's a
good question.
It's a really good question.
So we're doing a top 5 today, and Eric and I are going to pick our top 5 films from 1996. We are not going to try and guess, although I think I know 2 of them. But the last time I was that brazen, it was a donut hole. I got nothing out of it. So I'm just a glutton for punishment. I'm going back out on the limb, although we are not doing official picks.
Right.
So why 1996? That's exactly what Eric asked me when we were discussing topics. And everybody else that has asked me about it, a lot of people are saying, well, now that people are saying, well, what are you working on next? What are some of the next episodes? And I'm like, oh, well, we're going to do a top 5 from 1996. And I'm like, why? And I'm like, go look up 1996 in film.
Right.
And when people do, they'll get it on Wikipedia or whatever, and they're scrolling through and they're like, oh,
now
okay.
Okay. That one.
Exactly. It was, I dare say, the more I think about it, I dare say, and let me know, tell me if you agree, that the 80s, I would say the 80s to the 90s might have been like the second golden age of film.
Yeah, I'll agree with that 100%.
Because you had the big actors like De Niro, Pacino, Hoffman, Nicholson. You had them still in their stride, making really strong films.
Yep.
And then you had like the new up and coming class in the 90s: Brad Pitt, Edward Norton, Leonardo DiCaprio. You had like that second coming class: Matthew McConaughey, Matt Damon, Ben Affleck, all had gigantic films in the 90s. So it was just
people making comebacks. John Travolta was huge in the 90s, thanks to Quentin Tarantino.
Everything was going on in the 90s, and what you kind of almost forget. And I'm going to be honest, 96 was a random year until I looked at it. I was like, oh, what kind of years would be really fun to do? Not because there was something earth-shattering and gigantic, although there were in 96.
Yeah.
But after looking at the list, I'm like, oh my God, this could be a top 10. It could be a top 15. It could be a top 20. It could be a top until we're done.
I actually looked that up right before we started, and there was a couple online. There was like top 100. There's a top 40. Yeah. So it's well above the top 20 range. I mean, there's just enough content there. And good content to boot. So just range. Wow. Oh my God.
That was the thing. That was the thing. You are absolutely right. And when you look at 96 in film, you've got the blockbusters. You still had the sweeping epic, and we're going to go over. I'm going to go over the Academy Award winners for that year, and I think that's kind of telling. Yeah. You still had the big epics. You had the comedies. You had you had indie films. Then you had smaller indie films.
Right.
There was just so much going on. It was unreal. So let's dive in first, and we'll talk about the Oscars.
Okay.
And I'm just going to roll. These are the major categories, so we'll kind of roll through it, and it might kind of give you an idea of where the Academy was at that point too. So for best, there was a four-peat or a four-time winner for it was Best Picture, Best Director, Best Supporting Actress, and Best Score, and that was The English Patient. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that was that big sweeping epic that was still kind of winning awards back then, and still kind of it was those big. There wasn't a gigantic grossing film, but it was one of those critical darlings, and everybody was just loving The English Patient.
People felt that movie was, because it was so big and epic, that it was sort of reminiscent of like movies with like David Lean or something like that. People felt, a lot of the, I think, older generation felt obligated to see that kind of thing, thinking it might be like, we may not see this ever anymore, along, because we, like, on the flip side, there were so many smaller films this year too. So I think this might have been the only, like, the only film that reached that 3-hour mark, I think. I think so.
I didn't even check. Yeah, it was. I think so. It was definitely it was on that epic scale of like the Lawrence Arabia and that grand.
I can't help but think of the Seinfeld episode when I hate English face. Because when she's she's got to go and to see the movie with her boss, and her boss makes her take it, Elaine, and she's just bored to tears, watch it for not once but twice, and she's sitting in the theater like, I gotta get. And to be honest, and embarrassingly enough, I've never seen it.
I've never seen most of it. I didn't see the whole thing because I obviously definitely didn't see it in the theater because I would have seen the whole thing.
Right.
But it was definitely in. You don't even see it on TV anymore, and I don't even see it like show up on anywhere. But I definitely caught it at some point on television. I'm a big Ralph Fiennes fan, so he's anything with him is just going to be great.
I'm sure I would like the film if I did see it. It is my kind of thing. I do love those sweeping epics, but I don't know why, for some reason I never got around to seeing that one. So
I think when you hear my list, you'll probably understand like, oh yeah, now I know why he didn't go see English Patient. So Best Actress was Frances McDormand for Fargo, she was like the runaway favorite to win. I mean, I don't even think it was close. Best Actor, Jeffrey Rush for Shine. Kind of forgot about him and that movie, but that was like a big deal back then. His portrayal. And then Best Supporting Actor, Cuba Gooding Jr. for Jerry Maguire.
Yes.
So and that was kind of it was really an eclectic year for that, because usually when you have that sweeping epic like The English Patient, it'll take the Best Actor and Best Actress. Usually those kind of get caught up in the wash, but. No, this was really just kind of a pretty diverse. It got a picture and director. Supporting actress, we have to give props, was Juliette Binoche, so she won for Best Supporting Actress and then Score. So that's the Oscars. Now let's go to the top grossing films, and I think we'll see something a little bit different than The English Patient.
Yeah.
Just the top 5, and I'll go in reverse order. Okay. So number 5 was the Disney animated Hunchback of Notre Dame. 325 mil. Number 4 was The Rock, which grossed 335 million. So those were pretty close. Those were like neck and neck. Number 3 was the first Mission Impossible with 400 and I think I got this number wrong. 490 something million. It's not 497 because number 2 is less than that. I got to double check that. And then number 2 was Twister. Mission Impossible, $457 million. Okay. I had a 9 there. Twister, number 2, was $494 million. Okay. So, wow. And then number 1, and this movie was absolutely gigantic, was Independence Day. 817 million.
Yeah, that's a beast.
It was that blockbuster tentpole movie that no one, if you look, Twister couldn't even touch it. And Twister, I'm like, Twister was number 2. I was like,
yeah, right.
I really was like, yeah, okay. But you see the spread, and you see the gap between Twister and Independence Day. Everybody saw Independence Day. It was an amazing film. It was Roland Emmerich was just hitting his stride because he did this, he did Stargate. So he was just doing all those kind of sci-fi movies and kind of working his way up. And Independence Day was just absolutely like, it delivered on all levels.
Insane.
Yeah. You had Will Smith, so it was very accessible. You had the whole sci-fi thing. Anything with Jeff Goldblum playing a scientist is going to be a win.
Of course.
Playing him.
Hirsch.
Yeah,
played his dad. I mean, that was a nice little surprise throwing him in there.
Yeah, and the effects were crazy at the time too. For 96, those were groundbreaking effects, especially with the spaceships and that fight at the end. They're flying through canyons and they're just dog fighting and kind of the ragtag Earth. It wasn't even ragtag United States. It was like the ragtag planet Earth.
The thing I like most about it was the sense of awe was still there. Seeing those those ships come in like in the beginning and they're hovering over the city of New York and just completely enveloping the city in darkness because they were so huge. I remember seeing Close Encounters and the mothership, raises over Devil's Mountain and it had that kind of effect on me. I was like, wow, so it captured not only the wonderment of like Spielberg, but then by the end of it, it's like Star Wars. It's like this, space lasers flying everywhere and all kinds of craziness going on. So yeah, it was insane. It was an insane.
Yeah,
film.
And they kind of set it up like Earthquake or those disaster films. Like like they kind of gave you the different threads of the different characters. Yeah, and it was the first half was basically like Earthquake or Airport or one of those disaster film, Towering Inferno, where they kind of give you all the different characters and everything's calm beforehand, and then everything just goes down the toilet, and all these characters, end up pretty much interacting with each other. So now, top 5.
Okay.
So I have my order is, again, I'm a sucker for like the number one being the number one. So the number one is the number one. The other ones I just kind of mixed up just to keep it interesting. Now, what about your top 5?
Basically the ones that I picked. You guys might be a little disappointed in my picks. I don't know.
They're your picks,
but they're my picks, and these I picked actually movies that I actually saw in the theater, which by and large was not very many at all. It's only the 5 on my list, really.
All right.
There's a lot of personal stuff going on that year, so I didn't really get out to the movies all that much. So I went with that, but they're all solid films that I really enjoyed. 2 of them I actually went back and saw again twice. So,
all righty. So without further ado, the top 5 films from 1996, and we'll start with number 5. Go for it.
Okay, so my number 5 is From Dusk Till Dawn. I actually have this as a guilty pleasure. There were a number of really depraved movies this year. I mean, you talk about dark stuff, but this one, everybody was riding high on Tarantino and on Robert Rodriguez. You and I were huge fans of Desperado. So I almost felt obligated to see this film because it was like their Raiders of the Lost Ark moment. It was Tarantino and Rodriguez working together on this film. And, you see it and it's just ridiculously violent. And it's just so, I don't think there's anything moral about this film whatsoever. It's just so depraved. And, by the end of it, this was Grindhouse before they did Grindhouse, the actual project that they worked on together. I felt like they already did it with this film because it was just so crazy, so over the top. It's like 2 different movies. It's a heist movie. It's a kid, George Clooney makes his feature film debut in this movie. Kidnaps this family in a Winnebago, and he's taking them all, all over the country, and then they reach Mexico. And then it turns into a horror film because they go into a bar and it's full of vampires and they all turn into, and then it's just a bloodbath. And it's just so wild and so crazy. And every time that it's on, I feel myself compelled to watch it. It's on streaming. It was on Netflix, or if I rented it, whatever. I've seen it so many times, but they must have done something right because it spawned three or four sequels.
Yeah, and I think
And a television series, which Rodriguez himself worked on.
Yeah, TV show also.
He was like executive producer for, and it was like a reboot of the movie, actually.
Absolutely.
Don Johnson was in it, and so that's my number 5. It's just a crazy, crazy movie. Not one of my favorites by Rodriguez or Tarantino, but it hit its mark, I guess, in the day, because we were still riding high on that kind of stuff.
But, absolutely. It was, I'm having deja vu. This is starting off like our top 5 bass players show, because I had that on my list for a long time. It was one of the first movies I wrote down, because I'm like, oh my God, I have to. But then I ended up bumping it and actually had it as number 6 because it's an amazing film. You're right. It was Clooney before he kind of had a strange career, because he kind of started in film strong, and then as soon as he did Batman, that kind of took a little bit of the shine off, and he had to work hard to kind of get it back. But this was like Clooney, Tarantino. You had Harvey Keitel, so he was still helping out Tarantino. And doing favors for him, because he had done Pulp Fiction, he had done Reservoir Dogs. So I'm like, oh, okay, they got, the gang's all here. And then Rodriguez brought Selma Hayek with him, and he brought Cheech Marin with him from his kind of his gang and his group.
Danny Trejo.
Yeah, so it was like a Marvel team up of Tarantino bringing his crew and Robert Rodriguez bringing his crew. And Desperado, we absolutely were in love with it. I still love it. And it was a good film. It was bloody, but it was a good kind of scary, and had a lot of it's a great story, and it was just a great fun film, and that came out in January. That started off 96.
Started off the year.
That's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because when I'm going in the list, I'm like that was one of the first movies I saw when I'm going through what came out, and I'm like, okay, there's one. Yeah. And no, you shouldn't do that with 96, because there's so many other things coming behind it. It was absolutely crazy. Now I do need to let everybody know that we did agree on a modifier that if the lead actor or actress in a film had a second film that came out in the same year, you could also claim that. So do you want to claim anything with this? Because I was going to. You can make a claim on this, and it was a good film.
I think I can. I know I can make a claim, but I don't know if I want. Okay. I don't know if I want to claim the other film.
Well, you get it for free. You get it for free.
Well, why not? Okay, sure. I can almost guarantee, though, you might have this on your list, though.
What?
The one that I'm claiming.
Well, it's got to be with the lead in it, though. It's got to be the lead person from Dusk Till Dawn. Has to be in. Okay, got it. Go for it.
Not from Dusk Till Dawn. One of my other picks.
No. So the modifier is George Clooney was the lead in From Dusk Till Dawn, so he had another movie that came out in the same year. So you can pick that one as a tag along.
I don't.
Yeah.
No.
One Fine Day with Michelle Pfeiffer.
Okay.
Yeah, that came out later in the year. I liked that film, actually. That was kind of
like rom-com action. Okay.
Yeah, so Clooney was kind of doing both there. He was doing the gory stuff. Then later in the year, he had like the romantic comedy, which came out. So, so that's how the modifier works. If it's a lead actor or actress and they had another film the same year, you can grab it. And I have one that I'm going to do. Anyway, my number 5 is a very small film. It came out later in the year. So this is my vanity one that a lot of people probably didn't see. 2 Days in the Valley. I love this film. I loved it when it came out. It was kind of riding the Pulp Fiction wave of kind of the weird storytelling and kind of like a grittier type of storytelling. 2 Days in the Valley has an amazing ensemble cast led by my favorite, everybody's favorite scumbag, James Spader. And he's in villain mode, so you're not going to get a better Spader performance in the 90s than this one. You got Danny Aiello, Paul Mazursky, who's a film director, but he was in this. Eric Stoltz, Jeff Daniels, Marsha Mason, Terry Hatcher, Charlize Theron in her second role, but this was her first major role. Her first role was like uncredited, Children of the Corn or something. So this was her first film. Glenn Headley was in this too. So you had an ensemble cast, like bar none, that was absolutely amazing. And it's one of those, everybody's got a different story. There's a murder. and all the threads end up intertwining at the end. Spader and Aiello are hitmen, so they're tasked with killing somebody. Eric Stoltz and Jeff Daniels are detectives, so they end up involved in that. It was just so smartly written, and the guy that did it, this was like his only major thing. Before this, he did a lot of TV movies. He actually he directed some after school specials. So, so go figure. If you look at his Wikipedia, he kind of came and went, but this movie was just of its time. It came out at the perfect time when those kind of movies were still getting released to theaters too. A lot of that stuff now goes to, direct to video, and you don't know what to watch. But 2 Days in the Valley is absolutely my number 5.
Yeah, cool. It's a good film. I agree. It's definitely one of those. There was so many though. There was so many of those types of films, not necessarily this year, but when Pulp Fiction came out, all these, like, you got movies like Get Shorty and all these like Elmore Leonard type stuff happening, and these heist movies and these crime sort of almost black comedies in a sense too, because there's a lot of humor in some of this stuff too.
Yeah, so they were definitely trying to cash in on that, and it was directed by John Herzfeld. So John Herzfeld didn't do much, but he really, I think he wrote this too. So pretty amazing that this guy wrote and directed it, and then kind of just disappeared. Didn't really do a lot afterwards. But 2 Days in the Valley is my my number 5, deservedly so.
Okay. All right. So my number 4. So you listeners out there, I got to get this out there. So, in case you don't, some people obviously who know me know this, but you will find out probably, hopefully in the near future, that I am a huge Star Trek fan. So my number 4 that year was Star Trek First Contact. I had to put it on my list because I actually did see it twice in the theater because I'm such a fan. And it was amazing. I was blown away by, we weren't so like enamored with the first Next Generation film, Generations. It didn't do that well. It was kind of felt like an episode, it, kind of flopped. This one, right out the gate, I love the opening shot. I love the look of the film. It's probably my favorite looking Star Trek film. And that's saying a lot given, the Abrams movies, that they were, had such a bigger budget. And of course the special effects are that much, so big, much bigger in those movies. But yet I really like the look of this one. I love the darker aesthetic. I love the color palette. Everything from the uniforms were different, a brand new ship. It just had but it had the fun and the flair of the original series in it. It was a really great story. Brannon Braga and Ronald Moore, they wrote the story. And it's basically, the Borg come back, and it's like they go back in time to prevent the first warp flight from happening. And that's actually the B story of the film. Picard's on the ship dealing with the Borg. So it's a nice little satisfactory ending for his experience on the show. If you know Next Generation, that was one of the bigger story arcs of that series, where he gets assimilated by the Borg, and they bring him back. But here he's like, they're back, and he needs to exact his vengeance, so to speak. So it's almost like, it is sort of like a Wrath of Khan thing, but from his perspective now, and the captain is the Ahab character. So he is, he's got to stop them at all costs, and of course it leads to some heated stuff, some nice real conflict going on, and just a wonderful, wonderful film. The best, that most definitely. Probably I go back and forth, but it may be my favorite Star Trek movie, even over Wrath of Khan. But yeah, Jonathan Frakes, who played William Riker on the series, he directed the film. They actually wanted to get, I think, they were looking at 2 A-list directors to do it, and they passed because they didn't want to do Star Trek 8. So they kind of like, we don't, we're not interested. So Jonathan Frakes stepped up, and I think he did an amazing job. You could tell he's really proud of it as well. He, directed quite a few episodes of the series. He went on to do Deep Space Nine, all the Star Trek series after Next Generation, including the new ones, Discovery, Picard, and the Orville, which is Seth MacFarlane's spoof on Star Trek. And he directed episodes for that as well. So he's well versed in the Star Trek universe. But I actually love this film. again, I had to go back and see it again, and it brought back a lot of things for me. I actually saw it alone twice because I had gotten a chance to get out and see it. So, but I had a ball with it.
Yeah,
so that's my number 4.
Funny thing, we are both really big, giant Star Trek fans, but I never latched on to Next Generation. I really couldn't. But this was my favorite one. I loved this film. Like for someone who, I would be the hard sell. And they sold me on this. And I didn't, I knew a little bit about the Borg story, and he got assimilated, and then he got rescued. But I was able to watch this as a standalone film because they filled in enough of that backstory where I didn't feel like I was missing information. Plus, they tied it to the original series with Zefram Cochrane and his first space flight. So they really kind of tied the original series and the next gen together. And yeah, it was really well done. I really enjoyed watching it. And that's one that's when it's on, I will watch it. It's just fun. It's just a good one.
Yeah, it's great.
Good choice.
Yes.
Okay, my number 4. I'm going to give you for the next 4. I'm going to give you a quote from the film. See if you can guess it. Okay.
Okay.
So the quote is, "I eat pieces of shit like you for breakfast." You eat pieces of shit for breakfast? You can see where my choices are going, right in the toilet. Number 4
oh my God.
is Happy Gilmore.
Yes. Okay. There it is.
From Adam Sandler, his second film in his trilogy of like the 3 funniest films he ever did was Billy Madison, Happy Gilmore, and The Wedding Singer. Those were like the 3 best Adam Sandler films.
I'm so glad you picked this because
Happy Gilmore. Because you know what, when you look at that list, I have to look not only at the films I love, but I remember there was a lot of films on there that were hysterically funny that did not make this list, like Kingpin, which was and Cable Guy, which did not make the list. So I'm giving it away, but how could you choose? I had to go with Happy Gilmore because it is just I was laughing. Hilarious. I was laughing hysterically. I kind of caught up with I kind of caught up with his man-child humor with this movie. Like I didn't see Billy Madison in the theater, and I didn't get it. I'm like, he was acting like a baby. Once you kind of understand it, and you don't try and figure it out, and you don't try and look at this as serious cinema, Happy Gilmore was brilliant. It was just Christopher McDonald and Carl Weathers as Chubbs. Ben Stiller was in the nursing home, like the grandmother's trying to get out. I mean,
yes,
yeah, there was just so much to chew on it, and then just all the, and then Richard Kiel as the fan, and he had the nail in his head.
Julie Bowen was in it. From Modern Family.
Eugene Flaherty was in it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This just hit on all the this is just goofy, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I enjoy goofy, and I enjoy just like sitting back and watching stuff that's silly when it's done smartly. And and then the whole Bob Barker. I mean, the whole fight with Bob Barker is just like out of nowhere. And I saw that in the theater, and I was dying. I was absolutely dying. I was like, this is too much for me. So
I'm so glad you picked that. I really am. I never knew you liked the movie so much.
Oh my God, yeah.
I love Wedding Singer. Wedding Singer's my movie. That is just amazing. That film. I love that film.
Wedding Singer is like him growing up. It's such a great trilogy. Each he kind of plays variations of the same character, much like Mike Myers does. Like he does Wayne's World, and then he does Austin Powers. Will Ferrell always plays variations on the man-child, also kind of the same, naive and just kind of doesn't have any filter. But Adam Sandler really, and this is just he's got a violence problem in this movie too, which is the crux of part of it too. Is just that
anger management.
Just kicking the crap out of people like left and right. When he doesn't get his way, or he's just so when you mix that a frustrated, no good hockey player with the hoity-toityness of golf and the shh and the quiet, You get a classic. And it was directed by Dennis Dugan, who was he was actually an actor first, Dennis Dugan, but then he went on. He did Happy Gilmore. He did Big Daddy with Adam Sandler also, which was a cute. I loved Big Daddy also. That was like, you want to like kind of cry. He did The Bench Warmers. He did Don't Mess with Zohan. So he ended up working with Adam Sandler a lot. Jack and Jill, Grown Ups and Grown Ups 2. So they, he really kind of ended up working with Adam Sandler and was very comfortable with him. And you know what? Made for 12 million and it made 41 million. So, those kind of cheap comedies, they're low risk. And if they take off and if they catch, you make a boatload of money. So that was my number 4 is Happy Gilmore. Look, I didn't even mean it for it to rhyme, but number 4, Happy Gilmore.
Happy Gilmore. Great choice. Okay. So my number 3, this was another film that I actually saw twice in the theater. Don't ask me why I went back and saw it.
Wait, hang on a second. Instead of going to see movies twice that year, why didn't you go see other movies more?
I don't know.
You had an opportunity.
Maybe they just weren't out at the time. I couldn't find anything that interesting. Maybe it's just kind of slipping through the cracks there. But
so nice, you saw it twice.
Yeah, there you go. This was a movie. I like this kind of thing. I love legal dramas. I love military legal dramas. I love the morality and the ethics of command and consequences of actions or inactions or making a mistake, in the chain of command and that kind of thing. So my number 3 is Courage Under Fire with Denzel Washington. I thought it was a really solid film. And, there's a lot of movies like this out there. But I don't know if this year that, I think there were a couple that maybe came out later on during the year. But I know like after this is like kind of a drop in the bucket of this kind of thing. But I just love this kind of thing. I love the sort of the morality aspect and having to face your demons. And Denzel, he was involved. This was the first movie to take place in the Gulf War. First war movie of its type in the Gulf War at the time. He was caught in a tank battle, and he actually destroyed a tank, which was friendly fire. It was his best friend actually that he killed. So of course he's feeling pretty horrible about that. Is the guilt, and he's wanting to go to see his parents and tell them the truth, but like the government are saying, he got exonerated from that, but he still feels terribly guilty about it. So in the meantime, he gets assigned to this other task, which is they're investigating this pilot who's getting a Medal of Honor. Turns out to be a woman played by Meg Ryan, who did an amazing job in this film. And of course, that they do the Rashomon thing, the Kurosawa film. They touch upon an event that happens where you have several different accounts of the same event, and of course, each account is different. So we got to see a really amazing performance out of Meg Ryan doing that. Every time you see her in this film, she's giving a different point of view or a different emotion or whatever, whether she's a coward or she's angry or she's, so that was, so, of course through the investigation, he learns the truth and he wants to uncover that. But in the meantime, by doing this, it helps inspire him to tell the truth about what happened to him. And it was it's really an emotional roller coaster of a movie. By the end of it, it is probably a little too emotional, maybe a little too sentimental, but I don't mind that, in this kind of situation, especially. It was well earned, well deserved. And it had an amazing supporting cast. Matt Damon, in one of his earlier roles, was in this. Lou Diamond Phillips, great character actor from the 80s. You know him from La Bamba. Scott Glenn played a reporter who was after, Denzel Washington in this film, like trying to find out, uncover the truth, ends up helping him. Directed by Edward Zwick. He did Glory. He did, he did Last Samurai, and the one with Brad Pitt, and I just can't remember it.
Legends of the Fall.
Legends of the Fall. There you go. Thank you.
That's why I'm here.
Yes, of course. But no, I really enjoy this kind of scenario in films, and they did it a lot in Star Trek too, which is probably why growing up as a kid, they did a lot of this kind of storytelling in Star Trek, and that, so maybe that had something to do with it. But it was always fascinating to me about the military and the ethics of command and that kind of thing. So this was a great solid film for that. And I went back and saw it again because I thought it was that good.
Yeah.
So there's number 3.
I'm telling you, it's just, and if we have time, I mean, I'll run through some of the stuff that we didn't pick. We already hit on some comedies, and it was just too much to pick from. So we're doing our level best. So
yeah,
my number 3. Here comes the quote. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
You are so money.
Swingers. Favreau. Yes.
Of course. This is like Swingers was kind of was literally swinging in and out of my list. I would add it. I would take it off. This was swapping with From Dusk Till Dawn. Like From Dusk Till Dawn was on the list, and then Swingers was not. And you have some hard when you're doing a top 5 like this. There are some hard decisions that have to be made. Not everybody can be in the top 5. Right. But I said, you know what, Swingers has to be, because it captured, much like 2 Days in the Valley captured kind of riding the wave of the Pulp Fiction-y stuff. Swingers really was like epitomized an independent film, guerrilla filmmaking. If you read about this film, they were having people come to a party so they could film party scenes, but not tell these people they were filming. Okay. So they would just film when they, do stuff like that. Most of the budget actually didn't go to the actors. It went to securing the music, because the music was so important to the film that a lot of the budget was spent there. This was Favreau's passion project. He wrote it, and you saw Vince Vaughn came out of this, and it launched him into the stratosphere. Favreau kind of was on a slow roll. He didn't explode the way Vince Vaughn did. Vince Vaughn exploded and then started making those comedies like, Wedding Crashers and Dodgeball, and he kind of rode that wave. And Favreau they made a film right after this called Made, which was Favreau and Vince Vaughn, which was good in its own right. But then Favreau kind of launched in a different way, did acting, but then started fooling around with directing. And, his biggest hit was Elf, which was gigantic, which then, set him up to go into the MCU. But Swingers just evokes a time of just kind of, I connect with it because it's about guys that they're not losers and they're not winners. They're just guys, and they have regular jobs, and they get together. They play video games, like the scene with Vince Vaughn. If you play video games and you play Sega Genesis or anything back in the day, you will identify with him cheating when the guy comes to deliver the food and they get up and Vince Vaughn keeps playing and just kind of is winning. Stuff I used to do when I used to play video games. But so for me, it just kind of connected on all those different levels. And then they're going out in the bar scene, and they're not all Romeo. They're all standing around talking about, like, you're going to call your honey. How long do you wait to call your honey? How long do you guys wait? Oh, 2 days. It's just like they kind of think that they're a little bit bigger than they are, or and they go to these parties and like, this is boring, let's leave. And then they go somewhere else. So it's just, it's kind of very slice of life-ish. And, we were the same age as those guys when that film came out. So I kind of really identified with just like what you work, and then you hang out with your friends, and you'll go to a bar, and you'll try, maybe try and meet a girl or and have different levels of success. But you always have your pals with you though.
And they're boosting each other up.
Yeah.
Because Favreau is like, he gets depressed. He's, his mood swings, and, he's.
Yeah. Vince Vaughn. Yeah. Trent was just like the hype man. It's like, Mikey, you got this, Mikey. You're I don't want you to be the guy in the PG film. I want you to be the guy in the R-rated film. Right.
And he's not a jerk about it either. Like, because Vince Vaughn is clearly, he thinks he's the man, like, he's the suave one. But when he's dealing with Favreau, he doesn't do that. It's like, unlike Sideways, for example, where, the guy in that is always, catering to him, but he's kind of a jerk, but Vince Vaughn is not in this film. Another thing I want to point out, give a shout out to, is the fact that it helped launch the career of one of the great groups of the swing revival movement, which was Big Bad Voodoo Daddy. They're actually in the film, and our friend Andy was a huge fan of that band.
Yeah.
So we'll give a little shout out to him and to the bands, and get that out there. So. Yeah, so that was right smack in the middle because they're wearing like the swing shirt, like the sort of swing shirts, like the suave,
those bowling shirts, the club, the
shirts,
camp shirts, I think they're called, and it was kind of like like they're just regular guys though, and they go to the casino and they just do they go out to eat afterwards, all the stuff that we did at that age too. So although the swing thing I didn't connect with, but I was like, well, that must be a California or Los Angeles thing, so I went with it.
Oh no, oh man, if you ever get to see that band, they're still rocking it out there. If you ever get to see them, check them out because they're authentic, man. And they're that good.
Yeah,
they're awesome. So yeah.
Alrighty.
All right, that's your number. Was that number 3?
That was number 3. So now we are on to number 4. Number
2.
Sorry, I did that the last time too. I keep going in the wrong direction. I did that with the top 5. I kept saying number 4. And it's actually number 2. So let me correct that. This is number 2. So now, again, I need to ask, your number 1 just isn't number 1. It's just occupying that space. So are we building up to something or not really?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think it is. It's definitely. I didn't really put them in any particular order by preference, but I think number 1 would definitely be probably my favorite movie of the year.
Got it. Alrighty. So let's do number 2. Let me clarify. Number 2.
My wife would actually have my head if I didn't pick this.
Wow. Okay.
I'd be remiss not to pick this one, and that was Jerry Maguire.
Jerry Maguire.
Yes. I'm not a huge rom-com guy. They're very formulaic. It's always the same kind of thing. This movie, I was very taken with it from the very beginning. First of all, it's directed by Cameron Crowe, and as you know, he was a writer for Rolling Stone, so he's big on the music scene. So every one of his films has an amazing soundtrack to the film, and this one was no exception. I mean, the actual soundtrack, if on the album, it doesn't even do it justice because there was so many great stuff on the soundtrack, but. Tom Cruise gives, I think, one of the best performances of his career, I think, in my humble opinion. He's more, does more of the action kind of thing, but it really shows how much of how good he is as an actor. I thought he did an amazing job in this film, playing this slick sportscaster who gets caught up in, kind of grows a conscience, and he starts feeling bad about the job he's doing because people are getting hurt, and he doesn't care. The company doesn't care. They just want to make the money and all that kind of thing. So he writes this memo, or his mission statement, as he calls it, basically going point by point why we should get smaller and why we should care more about our clients and that kind of thing. It inspires a young secretary who's a single mom who's really inspired by this, and she's like falls in love with him, and of course the romance ensues, but it's just a great story too. You really feel for the guy. You really feel sorry for him. Amazing performance by Cuba Gooding Jr., who won the Academy Award as the football player who's got a rather large chip on his shoulder. Rod Tidwell, who is so into his family. It's almost cringy every time you see them together. They're just so in love,
happy. They're enjoying life,
and they're happy.
Yeah, they're enjoying each other.
But on the team, he's kind of a dick, So he's not he's standoffish. He's always complaining, and he ends up being Jerry's only client, and they form a bond, and it's just and it's real. You feel it's genuine. It's a good one of those really good feeling kind of movies. And you just can't help but like it. I think a lot of guys really took to this film too, because you think it's a rom-com. I'm going, but because it's talking about sports and there's so many things going on in it. I think a lot of guys gravitated to it. I know I did. I enjoyed it. I could watch this movie independently. I don't have to sit there with my wife and watch this film on a date night or whatever. But it's a very special movie for us because that was actually our first date. So,
Aww.
Yeah.
Aww.
So,
Aww.
but it had some amazing cameos in it. Glenn Frey, sad. It's hard to watch now because we lost Kelly Preston.
Yeah.
We lost Glenn Frey, who makes a really cool cameo in this movie as the football coach, and those were like unexpected kind of deaths, and those were big losses. So this movie is not so much of an easy watch anymore because of that, unfortunately. But yeah, I love this film. I think it's one of his best.
Yeah,
I think
it is
almost famous.
It's not just for women only. Absolutely not. It's one of the rare films where Cruise is playing somebody on his heels. Usually every Cruise is usually for the most part, always in control or kind of, back then he was kind of still doing stuff like this, like The Firm. He was kind of on his heels also. He didn't know what was going on. But this one, yeah, he was just not the slick agent that he thought he was. The business kind of moved on without him, and he had to figure it out. And this movie spawned not one, not two, but three classic quotes. Right? It's you got "Show me the money," you had me at "Hello," and then "You complete me."
That's right.
So this really, and it almost, it's the funny thing about this movie. It's like the men hater movie because Bonnie Hunt plays Renee Zellweger's sister, and she's just has not had good luck with men, so they kind of get jaded, and all the women meet and they just are just how catty they are, and and so at the end when he shows up, it almost reaffirms in a good way like that it can happen, it can happen to you. So it not only did it work on the level of seeing Tom Cruise's character go through what usually is a superficial type of relationship for him into caring about her son also very deeply, and that he wasn't used to feeling that he needed somebody. So it's such a great, it was so well written and so well done. And it did, you're right, it didn't follow the regular. It did in a way, but not really. It took a lot to get there because it was a lot of, okay, they're going to get together, they get married, and that was kind of a mistake. So now we're going on a different trajectory now. So now what you kind of don't know what's going to happen.
I think he took a lot of inspiration. I know Cameron Crowe, his favorite film is The Apartment by Billy Wilder. So he drew a lot of inspiration from that. And that's an amazing film too if you've never seen it. With Jack Lemmon and Shirley MacLaine. It's an oldie.
And Fred McMurray.
Yeah. But he drew a lot of inspiration. He knew exactly how to do it right, the rom-com right.
Yeah, absolutely. Such a great film. That's a great pick. Yep. Nothing wrong with your list.
On my list, but it's
you got a good list.
Like I said, there's so many, so much good stuff though in this year.
Nothing I would have predicted so far, but number one is The Lock. So anyway, my number two. So I'll give you the quote. It's got a curse in it. It's got a really bad curse in it. I'll just give you the first part of it.
That's right.
Ready? I'll try and do the impression. This is going to be really bad. This could go over really horrible. All right, I'm going to try an impression.
Okay.
Your voice never sounds the way you think it does inside your head when you're doing impressions. When you do an impression in your head, you think you sound like the person. When it comes out, it might be something different. Here goes. Your best? Losers always whine about their best. Winners go home. And the prom queen. Got it?
That's Connery.
I
know it's Connery.
Okay.
It's The Rock.
Okay, I just won. He guessed that it was Sean Connery, so my impression was close enough that he knew it was Sean Connery, and then he was able to make the connection that it's The Rock. It is The Rock. Okay. So my number two is The Rock. Would you have thought that?
No.
Okay. See?
No.
This is not like the bass players. You got when we did the bass players, Eric predicted 4 out of the 5 choices. This one I am stumping him, but I love the Rock is that it was kind of like the coming of that era because it was Michael Bay's second film. So he hadn't become that overblown, like the other stuff was yet to come, Armageddon and the stuff that really like overblew his reputation or his style became, Transformers. It became mega explosion. So in The Rock, he was still figuring it out. So it was still kind of a little tame and sedate and just more actiony and not over the top actiony. And you've got Nicolas Cage, who the year before won the Academy Award for Best Actor for playing an alcoholic and leaving Las Vegas. He then decides to become an action star because after this, for the most part,
that's right.
He did this, and then the next year he did Con Air, and he did Face Off, and he just started doing, and then he did adaptation. He did some dramas in there, but not as many. He went full Snake Eyes, 8mm. His career took a really radical turn with The Rock. So you've got Nicolas Cage, you've got Sean Connery, you have Ed Harris, you have I forget his name as Womack. And who just has it in for Sean Connery. You got William Forsythe, who's a character actor who I just always loved him. John Spencer as Womack, and he was great in Copland. He was like one of the guys in Copland. And Sean Connery, basically, long story short, British intel, kind of FBI British version, in jail for like countless years, because of what he knows, and they can't let him out. Alcatraz it becomes a hostage situation, and Nicolas Cage is like the goofy chemical expert. He's not an action hero, but the only person that knows Alcatraz is Sean Connery. He's got it memorized in his head, apparently. So the deal is they'll let him out if he can rescue the hostages. They'll give him his freedom. That's probably not going to happen. And Nicolas Cage is the fish out of water, really goofy, but he needs to step it up. So it's just got that the classic 90s action is all you could say, but it was before it went over the top, like Armageddon, with they're in space and they're riding on, an asteroid. And, this was still a little more grounded. The action was more grounded. It was guns. It was, they had to run and evade and swim underwater and stuff like that. So it wasn't crazy stuff. But you had some big actors too. Like Ed Harris I was surprised when I saw that he was in this. I'm like, what's Ed Harris doing this? Like, this is material is, I thought it would be kind of not what he'd be looking at. So the fact that you had these actors gravitating, especially Nicolas Cage, that had to be a gigantic win to get the Academy Award winner from the previous year to be in an action film. And Sean Connery was still riding high from, Untouchables and Hunt for Red October. And I don't know if Entrapment was before or after this. I think it might have been after.
I think it was after, yeah.
But he was having a late career surge in action films also. So it just kind of, and it produced by Don Simpson and Jerry Bruckheimer. And this would be, I think, Don Simpson's last producing credit before he passed away. Michael Biehn was in this. He was like the head of the SEALs. I mean, you've got every, who's who of the 90s. You've got them in this film, and it's just the action is just great. So that's my number 2.
Such an unlikely pair, though, Connery and Nicolas Cage. I mean, it's so crazy.
Yeah, especially because Nicolas Cage is just Nicolas Cage, and Sean Connery is like he's a serious actor, but I'm sure he doesn't probably take a lot of guff on the set. But Cage hadn't gone full, over the top yet. But this was on the way to him doing that. But just a great film. Okay. So
actually, I want to backtrack a little bit because you said if we pick one with a star, then another movie we could attach to, right? That was the.
You should probably wait.
I pick Perry. Okay.
You should probably wait.
Well, you could probably do the same for your number 2.
No, actually, I was going to do it for my number 1.
Okay.
So let's go through the list and then we'll double back on any additionals. Yep. So okay. So number 1, and you saw this film in the theater, right? Because you said you had only seen the only movies that made this list were films that you actually saw in the theater that year.
And so my number one is Fargo.
I knew
of course.
I knew it.
Absolute masterpiece. This movie. It's just. I mean, I love the Coen brothers. I mean, most of their they have got to be my at least top 3 favorite film directors. I think because they're just so consistently good, and this one was just so out of left field. I mean, I loved Raising Arizona when it came out. That was like such a zany comedy, and the only reason why I went to see this film was because of them, because I recognize, so I went, I saw it, and I'm like, this wasn't a zany comedy per se. It is a little bit of a black comedy, but boy,
it's a lot of a black comedy.
Just the matter of factness of Frances McDormand and just a lot of, and Bill Macy. He's just I can't say enough about it. I don't even want to gush or even say too much about it, because I think everybody knows. I don't think I could say anything that we could feel the same. We
could easily spend an hour on Fargo. We can
absolutely.
Easily spend an hour on Fargo. Because you're absolutely right. The thing with the Coen brothers is you knew you were going to get something quirky and weird. You just didn't know how they were going to deliver it. And I saw Fargo in the theater too, and I'm like, oh my God, this is just absolutely amazing. And William H. Macy stole. You know what? Yes, Frances McDormand won Best Actress. I don't know how he did not win as Jerry Lundegaard, because he was just a ball of nerves, a ball of frustration, and he had the. I think he had the hardest. He probably had the hardest job, I think.
Sure. Yeah.
It's just like, oh God, and Steve Buscemi is in it. You've just got, the uncomfortable scene with Frances McDormand and Mike Yamagita when they're at the, at the Radisson, and he's just he's like so low, oh my God, there's just so many scenes that I could pick apart.
And the thing of it is like they're all like, they're just so lost. It's such like some loss. And you feel for every single one of these characters. Yeah. You really do.
You're darn tootin'. You're darn tootin'.
Yeah. Yeah. So by the end of it, you just feel so bad for Macy. It's just, oh my God.
You got no cause to get snippy with me. It's like, you're darn tootin'. I'll get you the number. I'll get you. You want to count? You want a lot count now? It's just
I almost, at this point, I don't even know this should have won Best Picture that year. I mean, it deserved every acclaim, every accolade it got, but I think it deserved more.
Well, yeah, you think about it. I mean, and that's one of the things that we may do is go back and look at Oscar winners and say, well, who should have won in our opinion? Yeah. Does Fargo have the legs? Yeah. English Patient, like I said in the beginning, no one really talks about the English Patient. You don't really see it anywhere. Right. But Fargo, it spawned actually a couple of seasons of an FX series. Regardless of that movie on its own is just yeah. And it was the reason it would have been my number one easily, but I left it off because I knew you were going to put it on.
Okay.
I was absolutely sure. I knew you were going to go for Fargo. So I'm like, all right, I'll relinquish that. But my number one would probably be my number one anyway.
Okay.
I think. But Fargo is a fantastic choice. Oh my God. Such a great film. Mm-hmm. So my number one, I'll give you the quote. Kittredge, you've never seen me upset.
Oh my God. I'm drawing a blank.
Well, it's the reason why I wanted you to hold off on your modifier. It's Mission Impossible.
Oh. Okay.
When I saw this, I walked out and I still didn't know what went on in the film. And that's a sign of a great film, is if you are walking out still wondering, not in a bad way, of what was he in on this or was he not? Like when I left at the time when I saw him, like I still wasn't sure what I had seen and who actually knew what and to what extent everybody was involved. And the fact that it was done by Brian De Palma,
Mm-hmm.
And that was the thing when Tom Cruise announced he was going to, kind of make a series of these. He wanted a different director for each one. That was what his key was, is he wanted each one to have a different flavor. And you see that Mission Impossible 2 was directed by John Woo, and it had a totally different take on it. Yeah. This one by De Palma, I just love the camera work. I love the cinematography. I love that he's not an action director delivering this, because he brings a different type of tension to it. That the whole scene when they're in Langley trying to break in is one of the most high tension scenes in film history, when they're lowering him, and the sweat and
the sweat. Oh my God.
Just so it took you hear, oh, they're making Mission Impossible and the masks and it could have gone the other way. This movie could have easily gone the way of something campy and corny. And the fact that you got Brian De Palma involved, who's going to take it seriously, he'd come off Carlito's Way in '93. So he makes back then high quality, high caliber films, most notably known for Scarface for everybody else. But Mission Impossible is oh my God, it was another one where Cruise was in the same year. And that was going to be my modifier. See, we swapped, and I like that. See, you're taking this one as yours. I'm taking Jerry Maguire as mine because it came out in the same year. And Mission Impossible just really just delivered on smart action. And there was leaps of faith because of the masks and the disguises, but it was treated realistically. It wasn't like so far-fetched, and really cemented. I think this really cemented Cruise as the action star, because he was, then got known for doing all his own stunts, and it just he got crazy off the wall, became an action star, much in the way Nicolas Cage did. But this was just Mission Impossible was oh my God. And John Voight, John Voight, I was like, oh my God, I thought he retired. And back then it was this was 25 years ago, and he was still pretty young, and because you just hadn't seen much of him. And then he would kind of start popping up again.
Yeah, that was after Heat, right? Heat was 94.
95 was Heat.
Okay.
Yeah. So he had just that, and that was that was almost you could almost call that a glorified cameo.
Getting back to the mask aspect of it, that to me was the show. Yeah. That was the whole show. I mean, that's pretty much what's all they could pretty much do on the show was wear masks and disguises and that kind of thing. So that to me, that was that was actually hearkening back to the actual TV series. So that I thought that was cool.
Red light, green light.
Yeah.
With the gum, right? Emilio Estevez gave him the gum. Hasta lasagna. Don't get any on you. And so it's just such a great, and that was the thing is that the whole team got wiped out in the beginning. So you think, oh, okay, now this is going somewhere else. So then he's got to recruit a new team. And that had its in within the film, in the plot, it had its issues also. There was stuff going on there. So it's just so smartly done. And when I watch it again, I'm actually more taken by the cinematography and the angles and the camera work that De Palma chooses, which is really particular to him. So you're really getting a pro. This wasn't like a Michael Bay action film, right? Where you're going to get the big kind of explosions and the big the shaky camera work and all that kind of stuff. This was a smart action film.
There was a lot of suspense, a lot of tension in those scenes. Even the scene on the bridge when they're where they get killed and she's over she goes over the bridge, and all that stuff in Prague was awesome. It feels like an older movie, and you got right down to the rain-soaked cobblestones and all that kind of thing, and just the noirish aspect of it.
But, and you have the team. The team's all separate, doing their different things. This one's in the Galitzin's in the pocket, and he's getting away with the list. It was just, and you had Vanessa Redgrave as
it all comes
Job,
flooding back. The more I think about it,
or Max. She was Max. Sorry, she was Max.
Yeah.
Such just it's one that is probably I probably didn't remember. If you asked me, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you what year Fargo came out, but I do remember what year this came out. This was for me, I remember this film. I'm like, oh my God, it was so great. Only because I was so again, great film had me walking out still thinking about it and still wondering about it and still I'm not really sure what that was. And was he always in, so good stuff. So that, That's the top 5.
Well, you sure you don't want to go back to your number 2 and choose Dragonheart?
No. Yeah, well, no, only because you know what? I'm going to get technical with you because Dennis Quaid was actually the lead in that. So Sean Connery did the voice of the dragon of Drago or whatever his name was. But I would take that too. You know, he was working. You know, the guy was dragging down paychecks and working.
Sure.
So let's just roll down. You know, since we have a little bit of time, some of the stuff that we missed. Okay, and I'll just roll through, and this might be subjective. I'll just roll through it though, and you tell me.
I'll do the same. So go ahead.
Just quickly, big films like The Juror, Broken Arrow, which was a big action film that was with John Travolta. And Christian Slater. The Birdcage, which was like a gigantic comedy for Robin Williams. That was just a corny favorite of mine, which was Executive Decision, which was Kurt Russell on the airplane with Steven Seagal got killed like in the beginning, like quick. You think it's going to be a Steven Seagal film, and he gets offed like in the first half hour, and it became something else. Primal Fear, which was the debut of Edward Norton, right? That was with Richard Gere.
Was that his first film?
Yeah, that was his first film.
Wow.
Yeah. James and the Giant Peach, which was like the Nightmare Before Christmas Time animation, which was a Roald Dahl book based on that.
2 feature film debuts from both Andersons, Wes Anderson,
Bottle Rocket,
with Bottle Rocket, and P.T. Anderson with Hard 8. Yep. So, and then
The Craft, which was which I'll never turn off. It's one of those '90s films, you know, with Fairuza Balk in it and Robin Tunney, Nev Campbell. It's about, you know, the witchcraft, and it's just of its time. Skeet Ulrich was in it also.
Absolutely, yeah.
Like we said, you know, Twister, whatever. We can leave that one. The Phantom, which was trying to cash in on the superhero stuff with Billy Zane, but couldn't make it. Cable Guy, again, that was gigantic, and that was a dark Jim Carrey film. Dark.
Right, it wasn't the usual fare.
Yeah, and I'm surprised it made as much as it did, because when I saw it, I'm like, this is not what people are like. This is not like the Ace Ventura stuff, and it's not like The Mask. Right. It was a little more subversive, and I'm like, I don't know if people are going to dig it, and everybody did though. It made a ton of money. The last good Schwarzenegger action film, Eraser.
Yeah,
you know, that was like that one was like the last really good one.
Sleepers, Barry Levinson.
Sleepers, which was that was on my list. That was battling.
Kevin Bacon.
Oh my God, you had a cast like that was incredible. Robert De Niro, Hoffman, Jason Patrick, Brad Pitt, what's his name? Billy Crudup, right? So, Then you had the Nutty Professor with Eddie Murphy, the remake, which was
Tim Burton.
Yeah. Oh my God, so much stuff here. So when people were saying, "Oh, 96," like why? I'm like, go look.
Oh, and Train Spotting. We forgot Train Spotting.
Tin Cup, which is Tin Cup is the reason why Kevin Costner didn't take Happy Gilmore, because he was offered that, and he was making he was making a golf movie of his own. She's the One, which I love, Edward Burns. Again, listen to the titles we're rattling off. There's gigantic tentpole films, there's big comedies, and there's little small films like She's the One and Trees Lounge, which was the directing debut of Steve Buscemi. So there was just so much going on in this year. It's just amazing. It's just like you almost can't pick. And then of course, and someone was like, "Oh, this is going to be on your list." That Thing You Do. Yeah, like that came like.
That sort of came out of nowhere too.
Yeah, that's a great film. It was a great film. It was just how do you pick?
Some then it went some darker places too. You get movies like Crash with James Spader. It's a Cronenberg. That was a highly controversial movie. about crash fetishes and people having sex on a car crash. It's a crazy movie. And then you got stuff like Dead Man,
Yep.
Jim Jarmusch, and you got Bound, the Wachowskis is before The Matrix.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
with Gina Gershon, and yeah,
so much stuff, and then Scream, which started off like the Scream series and kind of reinvigorated like the kind of horror film, because then all that other stuff started coming out. And I Know What You Did Last Summer and Urban Legend and Final Destination. So there was a lot going on in the 90s. So, and especially 96. And then People vs. Larry Flint, which was another great Edward Norton film, which I love. So there's just too much to pick. And now and one of the reasons also, just quickly as we wrap up, Netflix was 2 years away from launching. And I think that's important. Netflix didn't start with the streaming right away, but there was on the horizon would be the death of like Blockbuster, right? This would signal the end of an era. It would signal the end of, movies, the window between when a movie was in the theaters and when it would come out. That would begin to shorten and shorten and shorten. As Netflix, it started off very meager. I when it first came out, I joined. I'd get one DVD, and when I watched it, I would put it in the mail, and then they'd send me the other one. But that heralded the coming of something else, because Netflix would then go into eventually way down the line, but they would get into streaming, and then other streaming services would kind of rise out of that too. And the way we consume movies became different. And 96 kind of represented an era where you had to go, you were going to the movies, and there was so much to choose from. It doesn't feel like there's that much out now because of the nature of distribution, because stuff will go directly to Amazon. It'll go directly to Netflix. They're made with lower budgets, so they'll go on streaming services first. So there's almost no way to aggregate it, because I don't have Netflix, so I might be missing stuff that might be great, but I have Amazon Prime, so I get that stuff.
Yeah.
Back then it was like, it was in the theater, and yeah, there was some stuff that would go to direct to video, but that was like the really, really low budget stuff. But now you've got stuff like The Irishman debuting on Netflix with big stars. That the whole business has changed, but 96 kind of harkens back to going to the movies where and before the superhero, before Marvel, and really kind of occupied every year since Iron Man came out, and our viewing habits became different. This was like Independence Day was like the big one, and everything else was just other films.
There was just so much.
There wasn't so many franchises. Diverse. Yeah, everything is franchises now. Fast and the Furious 27 exactly. and Marvel this and DC that, right. And there's nothing wrong with that. I enjoy those films, but this kind of harkens back to there was just so many different things to pick from, and all of it was good, and there was literally something for everybody. Mm-hmm. There was literally something for everybody.
Absolutely.
So,
and a lot of surprises, movies that just came out of nowhere. They're just kind of like, God, that was a great, and I go, oh my God, that was my favorite movie. Then you go see something the week later, and oh my God, you're constantly changing your mind, and it's just too many to even a top 5 didn't even do it justice. I think,
no. But we had to. So, it was a tough job. Yeah. But we steeled ourselves. We looked at the lists. We made our choices, and in some cases, I made multiple choices, as I always do, and pull things off and change my mind. But we got it done. I encourage everybody, go search, Google films of 1996, and I look at this list, and it'll bring you back. And if you look, and we didn't even talk about. I'm sure there's other things that are favorites from our listeners that are on that list that we didn't even talk about. So go check it, and you'll see it was almost like the glory days of film, where everything was just coming out. There was something for everybody in the theaters. And like I said, our viewing habits were different, so the theater was the place to go. So
give us some feedback too. We'd like to hear some of your picks as well.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep.
And as always, we thank you for your support. And you can find us on your favorite streaming platform like Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or on a direct link to us at 3324.buzzsprout.com. So, on behalf of Eric, my name is Dean. This has been the top 5 films from 1996, and we will catch you on the flip side.